Tyne Weir, land of shipbuilding, coal mining and heavy industry. It's also a place with a rich heritage in architecture, landmarks and monuments, many of which are centuries old. The heritage of the Northeast region is also under threat as buildings and structures fall into disrepair through lack of use. Tyne Weir Building Preservation Trust was established in 1979. Its objective to preserve buildings, land and structures of special historic, architectural or cultural value for the benefit of everyone.
The heritage in Tyne Weir is absolutely phenomenal.
If we didn't preserve some of our old buildings, where's the history come from? Where's your roots come from? It is part of your cultural heritage, your roots.
I think everybody's got that capacity to appreciate the environment around you.
It tells the story behind where you are.
They've lasted sometimes for hundreds of years, but once they've gone, haven't they?
The Trust's role is to save buildings. That's what I do. These buildings are literally falling apart. This is Last Chance Saloon.
We're about restoring buildings and structures that, if we weren't around, would become derelict, would become useless. We have National Trust, we have English Heritage, looking after the stately homes, the smaller buildings, who looks after them?
Tyne Weir Building Preservation Trust, established in 1979. And its job is to find wrecks of buildings, find them, money to restore them and then bring them back into use.
And the Trust finds a new purpose for a building and gives it a kind of new life that's relevant to current day, rather than perhaps what it used to be used for.
I have a range of projects on at the moment, all in different stages of development, working across 7 local authorities. So the 5 Tyne Weir authorities, and then we've just extended into Northumberland and Durham. And I'm looking for a building that's listed or has some community historical links. And when I see those bits of ingredients, that's when I know there's a project, and that's when I take it on and deliver it.
Tyne Weir Building Preservation Trust's very first project also happens to be their home. Alderman Fenwick's house in central Newcastle, originally built in the 17th century, is one of the oldest buildings in the city.
The Trust took the project on in 1982, so you finally opened in 1997. So that, 15 years of hard graft, taking a wreck of a building and turning it into something useful and beautiful again. Alderman Fenwick's house was built as a house, so it's lots of small rooms. So now it's been repurposed as a business centre. Its crucial role to the Trust is creating revenue to pay wages for then us to do our work on other buildings.
We don't just restore old buildings that look like houses to turn them into offices. We have a lot of unique properties. They have to make some money somehow. You can't put an office on there, particularly,
Finding money for heritage projects is always a challenge. But supporters, such as Ivor Crowther from the Heritage Lottery Fund, make difficult restoration projects a realistic possibility.
Up until the end of this financial year, we've spent just short of 400 million, and we've invested in almost 3,000 projects to support the sort of North East and its heritage. A lot of the Trust projects are the projects that people have looked at and shied away from in the past. They're not easy projects. We have worked a lot with the Trust. Their ideas for a project are realistic. They've been tested, they're understood, and the building's understood as well. Heritage Lottery Fund have a key aim to educate people and get people and communities involved with the projects that we do, and that is as important as the heritage, because if the building doesn't have a value within that community, or the people don't value it, then the building won't survive into the future.
When we're doing our assessment, part of the project development is understanding the community ownership and what they want to do with the building. And that's where the matchmaking of the Trust comes, where you're finding that new user of the Trust. So at the Buddle, the building's in a terrible state. The Buddle is a Victorian school, built 1876, I think. Became an art centre. This is a building that everyone loves. It's got an international reputation, the arts, what was delivered here. Supposedly the building was just closed overnight. And so the hope is that we can catch it before it becomes too much of a ruin and put it back into use. And so we're working with an organisation called the House of Objects. The House of Objects undertake work in schools in engineering. And you've got the Buddle, named after a famous engineer, in the middle of Wallsend.
It's kind of scary, the idea of taking on such a derelict building. I'd kind of rather be in a historic building that has got that relationship with the community.
It's a wonderful next step for the organisation.
It's just a dream. It could be a really brilliant space for us.
For some of the Northeast's most iconic buildings and structures, the possibility of destruction through decay or arson has become so significant they've been placed on Historic England's Heritage at Risk Register.
We are the government advisor on the built heritage. Our task is to get things off the Heritage at Risk Register. It's nice and simple, but not quite so simple when you're trying to do it, of course. We've always worked with the Building Preservation Trust, trying to help them do what they need to do. They have a great understanding of the need to keep the integrity and the significance of the buildings and structures intact, but at the same time, getting them to work in the 21st century. Very difficult with some of the monuments and structures that they've got.
We have a few projects on our portfolio that really struggle to make money. One of those is Dunstan Stairs. Really an iconic structure, a scheduled monument. It's on the Heritage at Risk Register, so the structure's really in danger of being lost.
There were 30 stays on the Tyne years and years ago, and they've all gone, and this is left. It would be such a shame for this to disappear.
It's an enormous structure, probably the largest timber structure in Europe of that sort, the last in the country.
It used to load the coal from the Durham coalfields, bringing that coal to the boats. The wealth of this region was built on coal, wasn't it? It's a monument to what built the city.
You caught us today having a meeting here with the Trust about the next phase of work.
It's a very interesting project. The objective, of course, is to make it suitable for public access, and access, of course, for birds and seabirds.
So you can now access the West End. It goes into the Saltmarsh Garden, an interesting place for wildlife, and a lot of unusual birds down here. Funders don't want to give you money to create something that's a white elephant. It needs a new purpose.
So we've been working with friends groups, the local council, Historic England, Heritage Lottery Fund, to try and find that future. I think it's really important to have different buildings in a space. It's those layers of history. This is one of my favourite buildings in our portfolio. It's a wonderful visitor centre, which is run by a community group called The Net. Buildings like the Old Lowlights bring a huge amount of character.
It's the oldest building on the Fish Quay. The building itself's got a huge history. It goes back to Henry VIII, and it's very much part of our story. We have the coffee shop downstairs, you've got the Heritage Gallery in the middle floor, the top floor, a local yoga teacher uses it 3 times a week, and then the space is taken over by an educational group. We have music events, we have poetry readings. This weekend we've got a book fair, as well as the food festival. I need permission to put another floor on.
The Net have had a 30-year lease on this building, so they imagine that they're going to be here for a good chunk of time, which is fantastic for the Trust. It's been a joy, and it's a building we use to kind of show people what you can do. A lot of the time I'm looking for homeless activity. You know, who would use such a space?
Even some of Newcastle's most recognisable buildings, such as All Saints Church above the quayside, are at risk.
From any angle, Gateshead or Newcastle, that church's spire is going to hit you. The aesthetics of the thing, that lovely oval, is delightful. It's a shame it's no longer used for worship, but a space inside is definitely a usable space. It's just a matter of being able to find the use.
Probably in the top 10 buildings in Newcastle. It actually closed as a church in around 1970. It's been empty for about a year now. It's not got a purpose at the moment. We've been bringing different groups in here just to see what they would do with the space. Trying to find someone who's got that kind of magical idea. That's the problem. I've not got the idea yet. It's kind of eating away at my brain at the moment, trying to find that solution. Because if I can't help, who else is going to do it?
My organisation wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the Tyne Building Preservation Trust. They don't just give back buildings, they give back their heritage, they give the opportunity to reach in and find their sense of place.
We do need this kind of organisation, people who understand the needs of the buildings and are prepared to take the risks. It's yours, it belongs to you, this historic environment around you.
There's a lot of buildings out there that people would like somebody to look after. The Building Preservation Trust seem to be that organisation.
I like doing this job because what you're doing is making a difference. You might fix something that's going to be here for another 100, 150 years.
It's difficult, there's lots of challenges and there's lots of hurdles to overcome. But every project has a moment where you suddenly realise what you've achieved. Because that's my joy is in saving buildings.